Let me tell you about the last Sunday dinner I cooked in my own house. It was a pot roast. Not because pot roast is my favorite thing to make, it isn't particularly. But it was November, the weather had turned, and pot roast is the kind of meal that fills a house with smell and warmth, and the specific promise of something good coming. I had started it at noon. I had used the good broth, the fresh rosemary from the pot on the back porch, the carrots and potatoes cut the way my grandmother showed me, not too small, so they hold their shape. By 5 o'clock, it was perfect. I know it was perfect because I tasted it 3 times and adjusted the seasoning each time, and the third time I tasted it, I thought, yes, that's exactly right. At 6 o'clock, my father-in-law Raymond arrived. He is 67 years old. He drove himself from his condo 12 minutes away. In the car he keeps in better condition than most people keep their homes. He came every Sunday, had been coming every Sunday for 2 years and 3 months since his wife Helen, my husband's mother, had died, and since my husband Caleb, who is the kind of man who takes family responsibility with genuine seriousness, had suggested that Sunday dinners at our house would give his father something to anchor the week to. Caleb had not consulted me before making this offer. That is a sentence I have turned over many times. Not with bitterness, or not only with bitterness, with the specific, complicated understanding of a person who loves her husband and also recognizes that his very quality of taking family responsibility seriously has a shadow side, which is that sometimes he takes on responsibilities that are not entirely his to take on, without asking the other person in the house how they feel about it. But that's context. We'll come back to it. Raymond sat at the head of the table. He sits at the head because he has always sat at the head of tables, his own tables, for 40 years, and now apparently mine. I had stopped pointing this out because it produced a conversation I had had enough times. I served the pot roast. Raymond took a bite. He chewed. He set down his fork in the specific way he sets down his fork when he is formulating a critique, a brief pause, a slight shift in posture, the look of a man organizing his observations. He said, Helen's was better. 2 years. 2 years and 3 months of Sundays. 98 meals if you count the weeks he'd come twice, which he occasionally did around holidays. And it was the Helen comment again. 98 dinners. How many Helen's was better, I had counted. 41. Helen's was better on the chicken masala. Helen's was better on the beef stew. Helen's was better on the lasagna, the roast pork, the salmon, the pasta fagioli, the pot roast, this pot roast, the one I had started at noon with the good broth and the fresh rosemary. I looked at Raymond. I looked at Caleb, who was looking at his plate with the expression he uses when he is hoping the moment will pass. I looked at my pot roast, which was, I want to repeat, perfect. And something that had been building for 2 years and 3 months arrived quietly and completely at the end of its rope. I'm glad you came, Raymond, I said. He looked at me. Starting next Sunday. I said, there won't be a cooked dinner here. I'm taking a break from cooking for Sunday dinners. Everyone is welcome to bring something, order something, or cook something in my kitchen if they'd like. But I won't be the one doing it. Raymond stared at me. Caleb looked up from his plate. Meg, he said. I mean it, I said pleasantly. Enjoy the pot roast. It's the last one I'll be making for a while. I picked up my fork. I ate my pot roast. It was, as I said, perfect. My name is Meg. I am 36 years old. I live in a mid-sized city in the Midwest, in a house that Caleb and I have owned for 5 years. And that is by most measures the place I feel most myself. The kitchen, with the window over the sink that looks into the backyard. The corner of the living room where my books are organized in a way that makes sense to no one else. The back porch with the herb pots that do better than they should, given my inconsistent attention to them. I work as an occupational therapist, which means I spend my days helping people figure out how to do the things that matter to them. How to cook after a stroke, how to dress after a surgery, how to maintain independence when the body has started to work against you. It is work I find deeply meaningful. It also means I have a professional understanding of what it looks like when someone uses helplessness or habit as a form of control. I was raised in a household where cooking was a shared pleasure. My father cooked as often as my mother. My grandmother, my mother's mother, Nana Lou, was the kind of cook who treated the kitchen as a laboratory and who taught me from the time I was 7 years old that the point of cooking is not performance, but feeding. You make food because you want to sustain someone. You season it because you want it to be good. You adjust it because cooking is a conversation, not a recitation. I am a good cook. I say this without false modesty because I've been doing it seriously for 20 years, and I know the difference between competent and good, and I'm good. This matters to the story. My husband Caleb is 38. He is a civil engineer. He designs drainage systems, which he describes to people who ask as the infrastructure nobody thinks about until it fails, which is accurate, and also, I have always thought, a slight metaphor for his personality. He is the person who keeps things functioning. He is thoughtful, reliable, capable of great warmth, and also capable of a particular kind of conflict avoidance that is so refined it has achieved something close to an art form. He is the best person I know. He is also someone who spent 38 years learning that family peace was his responsibility to maintain, which is a lesson that serves no one well in the long run. He is working on it. We have been married for 7 years. We have 2 children, Nora, who is 5, and Ben, who is 3. They are the specific, wonderful chaos of small children who are old enough to have opinions, but not old enough to be strategic about expressing them, which makes every day both exhausting and clarifying. Raymond is 67. Let me tell you about Raymond, because Raymond requires some understanding to be fully understood, and I want to be fair to him, because fairness is something I believe in, even when it is not convenient for the narrative I'm trying to tell. Raymond grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Pittsburgh in the 1960s, in a household organized around a very clear set of roles. His father worked. His mother cooked, cleaned, raised the children, and ran the household with the particular invisible competence of women of her generation who performed extraordinary labor without it ever being named as such. Raymond had absorbed this arrangement the way children absorb the arrangements around them, not as a choice, not as an ideology, but as the natural order of things. He had married Helen at 23. Helen had been, by everyone's account, a genuinely wonderful person, warm, patient, funny in a dry way, and an excellent cook. She had cooked every meal in their house for 42 years. She had also, as far as I could tell from the pictures and the stories, never once been thanked for it. Not because Raymond was cruel, because it didn't occur to him that it required thanks. It was simply what happened. The food appeared. The food was good. When it was not to his taste, he said so. Helen had died 2 years before this story begins. Pancreatic cancer fast, and then very fast, the way it goes. She had been 73. Raymond had been at her side, genuinely devastated, and I genuinely believe that he had loved her completely. He had also in 42 years never learned to cook, because he had never needed to, because the food had always just appeared. After Helen died, the food stopped appearing. Raymond's condo had a kitchen he had never seriously used. He ate cereal and sandwiches and restaurant meals, and on Sundays came to our house, where I cooked, where the food appeared, and where for 2 years and 3 months he expressed his gratitude by explaining to me in the specific vocabulary of a man who has lived his entire life as the designated critic at the dinner table how it could be better. I want to be honest about the beginning. When Caleb first suggested Sunday dinners with Raymond, I said yes. Not reluctantly, genuinely yes. Raymond had just lost his wife. He was alone in a way he had never been in his adult life. He was 65 years old and grief-stricken and genuinely at a loss. Sunday dinners seemed kind. They seemed like the right thing. I am an occupational therapist. I understand the importance of routine and structure and social anchors for older adults living alone. The Sunday dinners were good for Raymond in real ways, and I liked cooking. I like cooking. I want to be clear about this because it's important. The problem was never the cooking. The problem was never even Raymond coming to eat. The problem was what happened at the table. The first Sunday Raymond arrived, I made chicken parmesan. He ate it and said, Not bad, but Helen did it with a different sauce. We moved on. It felt like a grief comment. A man missing his wife. Understandable. The second Sunday beef stew. Raymond ate it and said, Helen would have put more rosemary in. A note. I adjusted in my head for next time. The third Sunday pasta. Helen's pasta was homemade. Mine wasn't. I noted it. The fourth Sunday I made homemade pasta. Raymond ate it and said, she rolled it thinner. This is when I understood that we were not talking about grief. We were talking about a man who had been the designated critic at the dinner table for 40 years and had no intention of changing the role simply because the cook had changed. Helen's thinner pasta. Helen's different sauce. Helen's more rosemary. Helen's better seasoning. Helen's preferred technique. Helen's version of whatever I had made this week, which was by the logic of memory and loss, and perhaps genuine belief, always superior. I did not say anything in the first months. I told myself it was grief. I told myself it was adjustment. I told myself it was an old man who missed his wife, and whose way of expressing that was to talk about her cooking. By month 3, I had mentioned it to Caleb. He compares everything to Helen, I said. Every Sunday. He misses her, Caleb said. I know, I said, but it's dismissive of what I'm doing. It's like the food I make doesn't count because it isn't hers. Caleb nodded. I'll say something to him. What Caleb said apparently was something quiet and general that Raymond received without acknowledgement, and that produced no change. The Sundays continued. Month 4, month 5, month 6. The comparisons to Helen kept coming, but something else began to develop alongside them, a broader critical vocabulary that went beyond comparison and into direct assessment. Needs more salt. The dish had the right amount of salt. I prefer it without the garlic. It had 1 clove. Sasha at my club makes this, and hers has more depth. I don't know Sasha. I don't know her depth. Why didn't you do it the other way? What other way he never specified. It's a bit dry. It wasn't dry. Too much pepper. There was a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper in a dish that fed 4 people. Each comment alone was small. Together, over months, they were something else. They were a consistent weekly communication that said your cooking is not good enough. What you make is a lesser version of what should be here. You are standing in the kitchen making an effort, and the effort is insufficient. He never said thank you. Not once. In 2 years and 3 months. 98 dinners. Not once. I kept cooking. I kept cooking because I love Caleb, and I wanted to support his father through his grief, and because I am not a person who gives up easily on things I've decided to do. I kept cooking, and I kept adjusting, and I kept trying things differently because I am a cook, and cooks respond to feedback, even bad feedback, because the habit is to improve. I kept cooking, and Raymond kept criticizing, and Caleb kept hoping the moment would pass. Let me tell you about the specific Sundays that I remember most clearly, the ones that have stayed with me because they were not the mild criticisms, but the ones that revealed with unusual clarity what was actually happening at my dinner table. The Sunday of the chicken piccata, month 7. I had made chicken piccata, a dish I've been making for 15 years. A dish I know well. A dish that several friends have specifically requested at gatherings because they love it. Raymond tasted it. He said, "The sauce is too lemony." "I can make it less lemony next time," I said pleasantly. "Also," he said, "Helen never made it with capers." "Chicken piccata is traditionally made with capers," I said, pleasantly. "It's part of the dish." "Helen didn't use them," he said with the finality of a man for whom Helen's version of anything is the definitional version. Caleb said nothing. I said, "I'll keep that in mind." What I kept in mind was the specific quality of being told that my traditional technique was wrong because a different woman who had cooked for a different man had made different choices. I kept that in mind, very clearly. The Sunday of the risotto month to 10, I had spent 45 minutes standing at the stove stirring risotto. You cannot leave risotto. It requires continuous attention and continuous stirring, and the specific patience of a person who understands that the dish cannot be rushed. I had added the parmesan at the end, and the risotto had achieved the specific creamy consistency that risotto is supposed to achieve, and I had felt carrying it to the table the legitimate satisfaction of someone who has done a technique-requiring thing correctly. Raymond tasted it. He said, "What is this?" "Risotto," I said. "Why?" he said. I looked at him. "What do you mean, why?" I said. "Why would you make this?" he said. "It's so mushy. Why not just make rice?" Caleb said, "Dad, it's good. Meg worked hard on it." Raymond shrugged. Helen never made anything like this. I went to the kitchen and stood at the sink for a moment, looking out the window at the backyard. Just a moment. 30 seconds. Then I came back and finished the dinner. The Sunday of the steak month, 13. I had made steak ribeye, good quality, dry brined, the day before, seared in a cast iron pan, rested properly. Served with roasted potatoes and green beans with almonds. It was an excellent dinner. Even Nora, who was 4 and suspicious of most proteins, ate her steak without complaint. Raymond cut into his steak. He said, "It's overcooked." "What temperature do you like?" I said. "Medium rare," he said. "It's medium rare," I said. The steak was pink throughout. I had used a thermometer. It was 135 degrees when I pulled it, which is the precise target for medium rare. "This isn't medium rare," he said. "How do you take yours, Dad?" Caleb said. "Helen always cooked mine perfectly," Raymond said. "She knew exactly how I liked it." "What does that look like?" I said. "So I know for next time." He looked at me with the expression of a man who finds the question slightly irritating. "You should be able to tell," he said. "A good cook can tell." I set my fork down. I picked it up again. I ate my steak, which was perfect. That was month 13. The Sunday of the comment to Nora, month 17. This one is the one I come back to most. Nora was 4 years old. She had helped me make dinner that afternoon. She had mixed the salad dressing, and she had arranged the bread on the serving plate, and she had placed the napkins on the table, folded roughly into triangles, in the way of a 4-year-old who was doing her very best. She was proud. When Raymond sat down, Nora said, "Grandpa Raymond, I helped make dinner." Raymond looked at the table. He looked at the food roast chicken, which I had also made many times, and made well. He said, "Good practice. You'll want to get better at it." Nora was 4 years old. She looked at him. Then she looked at me. I looked at her with the specific face of a mother who is containing what she is feeling in order to not model it to her 4-year-old. "You did a great job, Nora," I said. "Thanks, Mummy," she said. She ate her chicken. I ate my chicken. Caleb ate his chicken and did not say anything to his father about what his father had just said to his 4-year-old daughter. That night, after the children were in bed, I said to Caleb, "He told Nora she needed to get better." "She's 4, Caleb said. "I know she's 4, I said. "He knows she's 4. "He doesn't mean anything by it," Caleb said. "He's from a different generation. He thinks he's encouraging her." "Caleb," I said, "I need you to hear me. What happened today is not something I'm going to continue managing without your help." "What do you want me to do?" he said. "I want you to say something to him," I said. "Not later, not next week. Next Sunday. When he says something critical at the table, and he will, because he does every single Sunday, I want you to say something. In the moment." Caleb said, "Okay." He said it with the particular tone of someone who means it right now and will mean it less as the distance from the conversation grows. I noted this. I moved forward. The following Sunday, Raymond said the chicken had too much garlic. Caleb passed him the bread and changed the subject. The Sunday that was the last straw month, 24. There had been in the preceding 7 months since the Nora Sunday a series of smaller incidents that I am not going to catalogue in full because the catalogue is long and each item is individually manageable, and together they are exhausting, and I do not want to exhaust you. The pattern had not changed. Every Sunday, a criticism, sometimes comparison to Helen, sometimes direct assessment, sometimes directed at the food in ways that were arguably about taste. Sometimes, as the Nora Sunday had shown, directed at something that had nothing to do with the food at all. Caleb had said things on perhaps 4 occasions in 7 months. Mild things. Things that landed with approximately the impact of a leaf on a windshield. Raymond had not modified his behavior in any way that I could identify. Month 23. Raymond arrived one Sunday, and before sitting down, walked through the kitchen and said, "What are you making? It smells heavy." It was a pot of soup. Soup. "It smells heavy about soup." I said, "It's minestrone." He said, "Helen made a lighter soup." I turned back to the stove. Month 24. November. The pot roast I described at the beginning of this story. The good broth. The fresh rosemary. The carrots and potatoes that held their shape. The dish I tasted 3 times, and the 3rd time thought yes. That's exactly right. Raymond arrived, sat at the head of the table, took a bite. Helen's was better. I looked at him. I looked at Caleb. I looked at my pot roast. And I thought about the risotto and the capers and the steak temperature. And Nora, at 4 years old, being told she needed to get better. And 41 out of 98 Sundays of Helen's was better. And 0 out of 98 Sundays of thank you. And 45 minutes standing at a stove stirring. And 1 broken bird in a mobile and wait. Wrong story. But the accumulation, the weight of the accumulation. I said, "Starting next Sunday, there won't be a cooked dinner here. I'm taking a break from cooking for Sunday dinners." And I meant it. Every word. The rest of that Sunday was interesting. Not immediately. Immediately there was the kind of silence that falls over a dinner table when something has been said that cannot be unsaid, and everyone is waiting to see what happens next. Raymond looked at me with the expression of a man who has not in recent memory been met with this particular quality of response. Caleb looked at me with an expression I recognized as he is alarmed, but he is also listening. Nora, who is 5 and therefore has a very limited tolerance for silence at dinner, said, "Can I have more pot roast?" "Yes," I said. I served her more pot roast. Raymond said, "Meg, I don't think." "I mean it pleasantly," I said. "Genuinely, I'm not angry. I'm just done cooking for Sunday dinners for a while. It'll be easier for everyone." "It won't be easier," Raymond said. I don't cook." "You can order," I said. "Or Caleb can cook. Or you can bring something. There are lots of options." "Caleb can cook," Raymond said with the specific disbelief of a man for whom male cooking is a foreign concept. "Caleb cooks on weeknights regularly," I said. This was true. Caleb is a competent and willing weeknight cook. He makes good pasta and excellent stir-fry and a chicken soup that Nora has declared the best soup in the universe. Raymond looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at me. In that look was something I had not seen in the long months of Saturday evening. I'll say something to him conversations and Sunday lunch, passing the bread and changing the subject moments. What I saw was understanding, not immediate agreement, not yes. Dad, Meg is right. Not the clear and stated thing, not yet, but understanding. The look of a man who has just watched his wife say quietly and pleasantly and without drama the thing that has been true for 2 years and 3 months, and who recognizes in the saying of it how long it has been waiting to be said. "We'll figure it out," Caleb said. To Raymond. Raymond said, This seems like an overreaction." "It's not an overreaction," Caleb said, quietly, without drama. "We'll figure it out, Dad." Raymond ate the rest of his pot roast in silence. He ate all of it. He did not say it was better than Helen's. He also did not say it was worse. He ate it, and he was silent. And when he finished, he folded his napkin and put it on the table and said, "I'll see you next Sunday," with the tone of a man who is not entirely certain what next Sunday will look like. "See you then," I said. After he left, Caleb and I did the dishes together in the quiet of a house where the children had been put to bed. We had not spoken much since the table. There was a quality to the silence of 2 people who need to have a conversation and are waiting for the children to be settled before they have it. When the kitchen was clean and the children were asleep and we were sitting at the kitchen table with tea, Caleb said, "Tell me what you need." I looked at him. I need you to hear what I said tonight, I said. Not as an overreaction, as something I mean. I heard it, he said. And, I said. And, he said slowly, I think you've been patient for a very long time, and I think I've been asking you to be more patient than I had any right to ask for. I looked at my tea. He criticizes everything, I said. Every Sunday. For 2 years I have cooked a meal and brought it to that table, and he has found fault with it every time and compared it to Helen every time, and not once. Not once. Caleb, has he said thank you? Caleb was quiet. I know, he said. Not once, I said. In 98 dinners. A long pause. I know, he said. I love you, I said. I am not doing this to make your life hard. I am doing this because I cannot walk into this kitchen one more Sunday and spend hours cooking something I'm proud of and sit down to Helen's was better again. I know, he said, for the 3rd time. But this time, it was different, not the I know of someone agreeing to make something stop. The I know of someone who has finally arrived at full understanding. He reached across the table and put his hand over mine. I should have said something more, he said, long before this. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth the conflict, that he was grieving, that he'd get better. I kept deferring it. Yes, I said. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I said. We sat with our tea in the quiet kitchen. Ben's monitor made the small sound it makes when he's shifting in his sleep. Next Sunday, Caleb said, I'll call him before he comes. I'll explain. What will you say? I said. I'll say that things are changing, he said. That you're not cooking Sunday dinners right now, and that if he wants to keep coming, he needs to understand why, and he needs to be willing to change some things. I looked at him. That conversation, I said carefully, has needed to happen for 2 years. I know, he said. Don't defer it this time, I said. I won't, he said. For the first time in a long time, I believed him. Caleb called Raymond on Wednesday. He told me afterward what was said, because I had asked him to tell me, and because he understood this time that managing the conversation between me and his father was not the same as keeping me informed of it. He had called Raymond in the evening after the children were in bed. He had said, Dad, I need to talk to you about Sundays. Raymond had said, This is about what Meg said. Caleb had said yes. Raymond had said she overreacted. And this is the moment I want to pay particular attention to, because it is the moment where Caleb could have retreated, where he could have said she's been stressed, or she didn't mean it that strongly, or deployed one of the 100 small softening phrases he had used over 2 years to paper over the cracks. He did not. He said, She didn't overreact. She's been cooking for you every Sunday for over 2 years, and you've criticized the food nearly every time you've come. You've never thanked her. Not once. Silence. Raymond said, I'm just giving feedback. Caleb said, It's not a restaurant, Dad. She's not your cook. She's my wife, and she's been feeding you every week out of generosity, and she's done with it, and I think she's completely right to be done with it. Longer silence. Raymond said, So what happens now? Caleb said, She told you what happens. No cooked dinner on Sundays for a while. You're still welcome to come. You can bring food, order food, or we can figure out something together. But she's not cooking. Raymond said, What am I supposed to eat? And Caleb, who I love, who I have loved for 7 years, and who has been slowly and imperfectly growing into the person I always believed he was capable of being, said, Dad, you're 67 years old. You're going to have to figure that out. Silence. I don't know how to cook, Raymond said. I know, Caleb said. That's something you could change. More silence. Are you saying I should learn to cook? Raymond said with the specific disbelief of a man for whom this suggestion has the quality of being told to learn to fly. I'm saying Meg is not going to do it for you anymore, Caleb said. What you do about that is up to you. He told me about this call sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had tea on Sunday night. He told me what had been said, and I listened. And when he was finished, I said, "Thank you." "I should have done this a year ago," he said. "Yes," I said. "I'm sorry it took this long." "I know," I said. "You're doing it now." He nodded. "He's going to be difficult about this," he said. "Yes," I said. "I'm going to hold the line anyway," he said. "I know," I said. And I believed him. The first Sunday without a cooked dinner. Raymond arrived at 6 o'clock. He had not called ahead to ask what to bring or what the plan was. He arrived at his usual time with his usual expectations, which I understood was itself a form of testing a bet that things would return to normal, because they always return to normal. Because women of my type who set limits like this inevitably backed down when the limit was tested. He knocked. Caleb let him in. Raymond walked to the kitchen, as he always did, looking for the smell of something cooking, the visible evidence of a meal in progress. The kitchen smelled of the coffee I had made earlier, and faintly of the banana bread Nora and I had made that afternoon, which was for us, not for dinner. There was no pot on the stove, no cutting board out, no smell of roasting or simmering, or anything that indicated a Sunday dinner was underway. Raymond looked at the stove. He looked at me. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a library book. "There's no dinner," he said. "Right," I said. "Like I said last week, I'm not cooking Sunday dinners right now." "But I'm here," he said, with the specific logic of a person for whom arrival creates obligation in others. "I know," I said pleasantly. "Are you hungry? There are menus in the drawer by the stove. There's a good Thai place nearby that delivers, and the Italian place on 5th does a family size that's enough for all of us." Raymond looked at the drawer. He looked at Caleb, who had come into the kitchen and who was leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee and an expression of calm that I recognized as costing him some effort. "You're really not cooking," Raymond said to me. "That's correct," I said. "This is," he started. "Dad," Caleb said. "Menus are in the drawer." Raymond opened the drawer. He stared at the menus. He had, I strongly suspect, not ordered delivery food in recent memory, possibly ever. This is the kind of thing that is hard to verify, but that the evidence supports a man of Raymond's generation and habits who had a wife who cooked for him for 42 years and who since her death had been eating at restaurants and at our house, had probably not navigated a delivery app or a paper menu in a very long time. He held the Thai menu like it was written in a language he was still learning. "What's pad Thai?" he said. "Noodles," Nora said helpfully. She had appeared at Raymond's elbow in the way that 5-year-olds appear. "I like the dumplings. Can we order dumplings, Mum?" "If Grandpa Raymond is ordering Thai, yes," I said. "Can we get dumplings?" Nora asked Raymond. Raymond looked at Nora, then he looked at the menu. "Sure," he said with the expression of a man who is slightly bewildered, but recognizes that a 5-year-old is simpler to deal with than everything else in the room. Caleb helped him navigate the ordering process. The food arrived 35 minutes later. We ate at the kitchen table pad Thai dumplings, some kind of curry that Raymond had pointed at in the menu without reading the description, and that turned out to be significantly spicier than he expected. He ate it. He didn't say it was better than Helen's. He didn't say it was worse. He ate the spicy curry and the dumplings, and he watched Nora instruct Ben in the art of dumpling dipping. A lesson Ben received with incomplete attention, but enthusiastic execution. And at the end of the meal, he said almost to himself, "That wasn't bad." "The Thai place is good," Caleb said. "Spicy," Raymond said. "Yes," I said. He left at his usual time. He did not say thank you. But he also did not say Helen's curry was better, which was in its own small way progress. The second Sunday, Raymond brought a grocery store rotisserie chicken. He arrived with it in a plastic bag, one of the pre-cooked chickens from the deli section of the supermarket still warm in the container. He set it on the counter. He said, "I brought dinner." I looked at the chicken. I looked at Raymond. Something in me that had been tight for 2 years loosened slightly. "That's great," I said. "Thank you." He looked slightly surprised by the thank you, as though he'd been braced for a different response. "I didn't know what else to get," he he said. It's perfect, I said. We can do a salad and some bread, and it's a whole meal. You'll make the salad, he said. I looked at him a moment. Sure, I said. I'll make the salad. I made the salad. It was a good salad, a simple one. Greens and tomatoes and the lemon vinaigrette I make from memory, the one my mother taught me. Raymond ate the salad. He said, "Good dressing." I looked at my salad. "Thank you," I said. He ate his chicken. He did not compare it to Helen's chicken. He could not really, since it was a grocery store rotisserie chicken, and claiming Helen had made better rotisserie chicken would have required a more creative form of criticism than he usually deployed. The third Sunday, he brought pizza. 2 large pizzas from the place on Jefferson that has been there since 1978, and that makes, I will admit, excellent pizza. He carried them in himself and set them on the counter, and Ben, who was 3 and had not yet developed the capacity to conceal enthusiasm for pizza, said pizza, with the whole-body commitment of a toddler greeting something wonderful. Raymond looked at Ben. He smiled. It was a real smile, not the slightly performative version I had seen at the table, but the unpracticed one, the one that happened because a toddler had just said pizza with his whole body, and that was objectively delightful. "You like pizza," Raymond said to Ben. "Pizza," Ben confirmed. Raymond laughed. Not big, a short laugh, but real. We ate pizza. Nora and Ben ate with the focused pleasure of children eating something they love. Caleb and Raymond talked about football, a topic they have in common, and that I find useful for exactly this reason. I ate my pizza and read a few pages of my book, and felt for the first time in 2 years and 3 months of Sundays, something I can only describe as comfortable. After the children were in bed that night, I said to Caleb, "He brought pizza." "He did," Caleb said. "And he laughed at Ben." "He did," Caleb said. "He's different when he's not criticizing," I said. Caleb looked at me. "He is," he said. "He always was. I kept hoping you'd see it without the other thing, but the other thing got in the way." "Yes," I said. "Is it better?" he said. "It's better," I said. This is the part of the story I did not see coming. About 6 weeks into the new Sunday arrangement, the arrangement where Raymond brought food or ordered food, and I made a salad or set the table, and we ate together without my standing at the stove for 2 hours. Beforehand, Raymond arrived one Sunday afternoon, about an hour earlier than usual. He knocked. Caleb let him in. I was in the kitchen. Raymond came in and stood in the doorway in the specific way of a person who wants to say something and is not sure how to begin. "Meg?" he said. I turned. He had a piece of paper in his hand. "I want to make something," he said, "for Sunday, and I don't know how." I looked at him. The piece of paper I saw was a printout, an actual printed-out recipe, the way people printed things before phones made it unnecessary. The recipe was for beef stew. Helen's beef stew, I guessed from the handwritten notes in the margins. "Is that a recipe?" I said. "Helen's," he said. "I found it in the box where she kept her recipes. She had a whole box. I didn't know." He said this last part with a quality that was not what I expected. Not the bluster, not the critical voice, not the authority of a man explaining how things should be done. He said, "I didn't know," with the quiet of a man who has been sitting with something he has discovered and doesn't know entirely what to do with. "You found Helen's recipe box," I said. "She had over 200 recipes," he said. "Cards printouts, some cut from magazines, some in her handwriting, some her mother's." He paused. I sat with them for a long time. I set down what I was doing. "Sit down," I said. He sat at the kitchen table. I poured him a cup of coffee and set it in front of him, and sat across from him, and he put the recipe on the table between us. Helen's beef stew in Helen's handwriting. The same handwriting that appeared in the margins of the printout. Notes like, "more time than it says," and "brown the meat very hot," and "Grandma Reyes added wine I prefer without." I looked at the recipe. "Do you want to make it?" I said. "I don't know how to start," he said. "What do you mean?" "I don't know." He paused with the specific frustration of a person who is trying to articulate something they've never had to articulate before. I don't know what half these steps mean. Brown the meat. What does that mean exactly? I know what brown means, but I don't know what it looks like when you're doing it right. I looked at Raymond. 67 years old. 42 years of eating meals that appeared in front of him fully formed. Now sitting in my kitchen with his dead wife's recipe and a question about what brown the meat looks like when you're doing it right. Something complicated happened in me. Not sympathy, exactly. Not forgiveness of the 98 Sundays. Something more specific, the recognition of a person who is encountering for the first time the actual weight of what he had been taking for granted. "What day are you thinking?" I said. He looked at me. "To make the stew," I said. "I thought," he started. "I thought maybe now, if you had time." "It takes about 3 hours," I said. "I know," he said. "I read the recipe 4 times." I looked at the clock. It was 4:30. Dinner at 7 would be tight, but doable. I looked at Raymond. I looked at Helen's handwriting. More time than it says. "Okay," I said. "Go wash your hands. We'll start with browning the meat." He washed his hands. He stood at my counter with his sleeves rolled up. I noticed for the first time that he had his father's hands, that Caleb had inherited those same wide hands, that Nora had inherited them from Caleb, all the same hands going back through generations. And I showed him how to brown the meat. "The pan has to be hot," I said. "Really hot. You'll know it's hot enough when a drop of water flicks off immediately." I demonstrated. "Now pat the meat dry before it goes in," I said. "If it's wet, it won't brown, it'll steam." "Why?" he said. "Moisture creates steam," I said. "Steam doesn't brown. Brown is what happens when the surface of the meat gets very hot and the proteins and sugars react. It's called the Maillard reaction." He looked at me with the specific expression of a man receiving more information than he asked for. "The meat has to be dry," I said. "That's the practical part." "The meat has to be dry," he repeated. "Yes," I said. He patted the meat dry. He put it in the pan. He jumped slightly at the sound it made, the loud, immediate sear of dry meat in a very hot pan. "That's good," I said. "That sound is what you want." He watched the meat. "Don't touch it," I said. "Let it sit. It will stick at first, and then it will release when it's ready. If you try to move it too early, it'll tear." He did not touch it. He watched it with the focused attention of someone performing a task that requires attention. After 3 minutes, the edge of the meat had turned golden. I said, "Turn it." He turned it. The browned side was perfect. The deep mahogany of properly seared beef, the kind of colour that translates directly into flavour. Raymond looked at it. "Oh," he said. "Just oh." The specific sound of a person understanding something they have eaten many times but never watched being made. "Helen made it look like this," he said, quietly. Not a comparison, an observation, a recognition. "Yes," I said. "This is what it looks like." He made the stew. I helped handed him things, talked him through the steps, answered the questions he asked with more frequency and more openness as the afternoon went on. The time, more than the recipe said, because Helen had specified more time. The wine the recipe said without, but Raymond, going through the notes, found a later annotation in Helen's handwriting. "Actually, the wine is better. Grandma Reyes was right." "Add the wine," I said. He added the wine. The stew went in the oven. We stood in the kitchen, which smelled exactly the way a kitchen with a beef stew in the oven should smell in November, and Raymond said, "Now what?" "Now we wait," I said. He looked at the oven. "She did this every week," he said. "Yes," I said. "For 42 years," he said. "Yes," I said. A long silence. "I never," he started. Stopped. Started again. "I never thought about how much work it was." I didn't say anything. "I told her sometimes that her stew was good," he said. "But I also told her when I thought it needed something, when it wasn't quite right." "Yes," I said. "She never said anything," he said. "No," I said. "She didn't." He was quiet for a long time. "The stew she made was better than what I just made," he said. "I can already tell. Even the smell is slightly different. You'll get closer with practice, I said. She had 42 years of practice, he said. Yes, I said. He sat at the table. I sat across from him. The stew was in the oven. Outside in the backyard, I could hear Caleb with the children, Nora's voice high and insistent describing something to Ben, who was making the sound he makes when he is listening and also running. Meg, Raymond said. I looked at him. I owe you an apology, he said, for the Sundays. I looked at him carefully, at the 67 years of him, at the hands that were Caleb's hands and Nora's hands, at the person who had, for 2 years and 3 months, sat at my table and found fault with what I had made, and never once said thank you. I'm listening, I said. I talked to Helen the way I talked to you, he said, at the table, telling her what was wrong, comparing things. I thought I told myself she liked getting the feedback, that it helped her improve. Did she, I said, like the feedback? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't think I ever asked, he said. There it was, the whole thing in 6 words. He had never asked. He had assumed. For 42 years with Helen and 2 years with me, he had assumed that the woman cooking the food wanted to be told what was wrong with it. It had not occurred to him to ask. She probably didn't, I said. Gently, not cruelly. In my experience, people who cook for someone they love want to know that the food is good and that the cooking is appreciated. The feedback, the detailed critical feedback that's for a cooking class, not a dinner table. He nodded slowly. I thought I was helping, he said. I know, I said. I wasn't, he said. No, I said. He looked at the oven. I'm sorry, he said, for the Sundays. For what I said to Nora. A pause. Helen would have told me I was being... She would have had a word for it. Difficult, I offered. He laughed the short, surprised laugh I had heard the Sunday he brought pizza, and Ben had said, pizza, not performed. Real. Difficult, he said. Yes, that's the word she used. She sounds like a smart woman, I said. She was, he said, and in his voice was the grief, the real grief, the grief I had always understood, was underneath the criticism, the grief of a man who had lost the person who organized his world, and who had not known, until she was gone, how much of the world she had been holding. We sat with that for a while. The stew smelled the way November kitchens should smell. Outside, Nora said something to Ben, and he laughed the enormous laugh of a 3-year-old. I'm going to go wash up, Raymond said, finally standing, before the kids come in. Second door on the left, I said. He went. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands around my coffee cup, which was cold by now. Caleb came in from the backyard with both children attached to him in the specific way children attach to fathers, who have been playing outside with them. He looked at the oven. He looked at me. Is that, he said. Beef stew, I said. Helen's recipe. Who made it? Raymond, I said. Mostly. Caleb stood in the kitchen for a moment. Are you okay? He said. Yes, I said. Actually, yes. Ben detached from Caleb's leg and came to me and put his arms up in the universal gesture of a toddler who wants to be held. I held him. He was warm and smelled like cold air and small children, which is one of the best smells in the world. Okay, I said to him to Caleb to the kitchen. Let's set the table. The stew was not as good as Helen's. Raymond said so himself at the table, with a quality that was different from his usual pronouncements, not a critique, not a comparison issued to diminish what was in front of us, more like a man measuring himself honestly. It's not quite right, he said. I can taste where I went wrong. The meat needs longer at the beginning. The browning, I said. Yes, you moved it a little early. I'll get it next time, he said. And there it was, next time. He was assuming a next time. He was planning to make it again. Caleb looked at his stew and then at his father. It's good, Dad, he said. It's not Helen's, Raymond said. No, Caleb said, but it's yours. Raymond was quiet. Nora, who has the radar of a 5-year-old for when adults are having a moment and who finds this interesting rather than uncomfortable, said, I like it. You do, Raymond said. "It's good stew," Nora said with the authority of a child who has eaten many stews and knows what good stew tastes like. Raymond looked at Nora. "Thank you," he said. It was the first thank you I had heard from Raymond in 2 years and 3 months of Sundays. Not to me, to Nora, for a compliment about a stew he made himself. But it was a thank you. It was somewhere to start. Over the following months, Sunday dinners changed. Not all at once, not cleanly. It was not the case that Raymond became a different person in one afternoon in my kitchen. People don't work that way, and I would not have believed it if he had. But they changed. Some Sundays, Raymond brought food. The rotisserie chicken pizza, once a very creditable attempt at a salad that he had clearly thought about, and that featured a dressing he'd made from a recipe he'd found in Helen's box. The dressing was good. I told him it was good. He said, "The vinegar ratio is wrong. I'll adjust it." I looked at him. He looked at me. "That's..." I started. He caught it. The specific irony of himself critiquing his own cooking in exactly the register he had used for 2 years on mine. The corner of his mouth moved. "Too much feedback," he said. "The dressing is good," I said. "Thank you," he said. Some Sundays, Caleb cooked. He made his chicken soup twice, which Nora received with the reverence she reserves for her favorite things, and once a pasta that Raymond ate without comment, except to ask for seconds, which I noted. Some Sundays, I cooked. Not every Sunday. Not because it was expected, but because I like cooking, and I was choosing to do it, which is different from doing it because the alternative is a week of critical commentary about not doing it. The first Sunday I cooked again was about 8 weeks after the pot roast Sunday. I made the chicken piccata, the one from month 7, the one with the capers, the one that Raymond had said was too lemony and that Helen had never made with capers. I brought it to the table. Raymond took a bite. He chewed. He set his fork down. I watched him. He picked his fork up. He said, "The lemon is good." I looked at my chicken piccata. "Thank you," I said. "And the capers," he said. "I see why they're there." Caleb, who had been watching this exchange with the specific focused attention of a man who has been watching his father and wife negotiate a kitchen for 2.5 years, said nothing. He ate his piccata. "Helen never used them," Raymond said, "but I can see why you do." "Thank you," I said again. He nodded. He finished his chicken. He asked for the recipe. Not to critique it further, he asked for the recipe. I wrote it out for him on an index card. He took it home. 2 Sundays later, he made chicken piccata. It was not as good as mine. He said so himself. "Yours is better." I almost fell off my chair. "You'll get there," I said. "The lemon amount confused me," he said. "Half a lemon per breast," I said. "And you want the pan really hot for the sauce." "Half a lemon," he repeated. He wrote it on his recipe card, which he had brought. He was keeping recipe cards, his own. He had taken a box from Helen's collection and was adding to it his own notes, his own attempts, his own adjustments. I did not know what to do with this information except to find it unexpectedly quietly moving. I want to tell you about something that happened in month 4 of the new Sunday arrangement. Nora, who is 5, and who has her grandmother Nana Lou's instinct for the kitchen, who has been my sous chef since she could stand on a step stool and stir, had decided that she wanted to teach Grandpa Raymond to make cookies. Not because anyone suggested it, because Nora moves through the world with the specific confidence of a person who identifies things that need doing and does them. She had decided that Grandpa Raymond needed to know how to make cookies, and she was the appropriate person to teach him. She told me this on a Saturday morning. "I'm going to teach Grandpa Raymond to make cookies tomorrow," she said. "Does he know that?" I said. "I'm going to tell him when he gets here," she said. "Okay," I said. The following Sunday, Raymond arrived and Nora was waiting at the door. "Grandpa Raymond," she said, "we're making cookies today." Raymond looked at Nora. He looked at me. I made a face that communicated this was her initiative, not mine. He looked back at Nora. "What kind?" he said. "Chocolate chip," Nora said. I know how. I'll teach you. All right, he said. He took off his coat, and Nora, 5 years old, with the authoritative certainty of someone who considers herself an expert, taught Raymond to make chocolate chip cookies. She explained every step. She told him the butter had to be soft, not melted. She told him you had to mix the sugar and butter until it was really fluffy. Grandpa, keep going. She told him the chocolate chips went in last, not before the flour. Raymond followed every instruction. When she told him to keep mixing the butter and sugar, he kept mixing. When she said the chocolate chips went in last, he waited until she indicated the flour was incorporated. He did not tell her she was doing it wrong. He did not tell her his mother's cookies were better. He followed her lead. The cookies came out imperfectly round. Nora had used a tablespoon to scoop them, and they had spread in irregular shapes, but they were good cookies. The edges were crisp, and the centers were soft, and they smelled like everything a chocolate chip cookie should smell like. Nora took one off the cooling rack and held it out to Raymond. Try it, she said. He tried it. He chewed. Nora watched him with the intensity of a chef awaiting a verdict. Good practice, I thought. I waited. It's very good, Raymond said. Nora smiled. I know, she said. He laughed. The real laugh. The one I was starting to recognize as the version of Raymond that existed underneath the dinner table. Raymond, the version that had apparently always been there, and had simply been covered over by 42 years of habits that served him in ways he'd never examined. You're a good teacher, he told Nora. She nodded with the equanimity of someone who already knew this. You can come back and learn more things, she offered. Raymond looked at me. I looked at him. I'd like that, he said. It has been about 9 months since the last pot roast. Raymond still comes on Sundays. He brings food about half the time. The rotisserie chicken has become his reliable contribution. But he has also made the beef stew twice more improving each time, as he noted himself with the matter-of-fact assessment he has started applying to his own cooking, rather than to mine the chicken piccata once and a soup from Helen's recipe box that was a minestrone. I chose not to say anything about this. There was nothing to say. He made minestrone. It was good minestrone. He was pleased with it. On the Sundays when I cook it is because I want to cook, not because Sunday dinner is my obligation. This is a distinction I cannot fully explain to someone who hasn't felt the difference, but it is total. Raymond, about 6 weeks ago, said thank you. To me, specifically, for a meal I had made. It was the pasta fagioli, a soup pasta dish that requires about an hour, and is the kind of thing that makes a cold Sunday in February feel survivable. He ate it, and at the end of the meal, unprompted, he said, Thank you, Meg. That was excellent. I looked at him. You're welcome, I said. I've been trying to find Helen's recipe for this, he said. She made it every winter. I can't find it in the box. I'll write mine out for you, I said. I'd appreciate that, he said. I wrote it out on an index card after dinner. He put it in his jacket pocket. Next Sunday, he said. I'll try it. Let me know how it goes, I said. He looked at me with the expression slightly surprised, slightly rueful of a man who has become aware in the last 9 months of the distance between who he was at dinner tables for 67 years and who he might yet become. I will, he said. Caleb, washing dishes in the background, did not say anything. But when Raymond had gone and the children were in bed, he came to where I was sitting in the living room, and he leaned down and he kissed the top of my head, and he said thank you. For what? I said. For stopping, he said. For making this happen instead of just enduring it. I looked at him. It needed to stop, I said. I know, he said. I should have made it stop sooner. You helped when it mattered, I said. You stopped cooking, he said. Best decision I've made in years, I said. He sat next to me. We watched the end of whatever was on TV in the quiet of a Sunday evening in a house with sleeping children. Outside, Raymond was driving home in his well-maintained car, probably with an index card in his jacket pocket, and a plan for the following Sunday. Next Sunday, he'll try the pasta fagioli. He will probably find something to adjust in his own version of it. He will write the adjustment on the card. He is 67 years old, and he is learning to cook. This is, I have decided, one of the more satisfying things I have witnessed. I want to tell you the real thing I learned. The whole thing, not just the satisfying version. The satisfying version is, I stopped cooking, and the man who criticized my cooking was forced to confront what he'd been taking for granted, and he became a better person, and everyone lived happily ever after. That version is mostly true. But the real thing is more complicated. The first thing I learned is about the difference between endurance and action. For 2 years and 3 months, I endured. I told myself I was managing, I was choosing my battles. I was being a reasonable adult in a complicated family situation. But endurance in a situation that doesn't improve on its own is not the same as management. Endurance is just sustained suffering without a strategy. The pot roast Sunday was not a strategy. It was a breaking point. The strategy was everything that came after the conversation with Caleb that night. Caleb's call to Raymond, the consistency of the new arrangement. But the breaking point was necessary to get to the strategy. I wish I had arrived at the strategy sooner. I wish I had said 6 months in Raymond. I need to tell you that when you criticize the food every Sunday without acknowledging the effort, it's discouraging. I'd like us to try a different way of doing this. I didn't say that. I endured instead until endurance became impossible. Clear is kinder than careful. I keep learning this lesson from different directions. The second thing I learned is about Caleb. Caleb had a failure in this story. It is not a small failure or an excusable one, and I want to name it clearly because naming it is part of how you change it. He watched his wife cook dinner for his father 98 times. He watched his father criticize it nearly half those times. He said mild things on 4 occasions and changed the subject when he should have held the line and told himself his father was grieving when grief had long since ceased to explain the behavior. He failed me in that. He also, when I finally said enough, did what needed doing. He called his father. He said the real thing. He held the line. He has continued to hold it. These two facts coexist. He failed me for 2 years, and he showed up in the year that followed. I hold both things about him, because he is a person, and people contain their failures and their recoveries simultaneously. What I have told him clearly more than once is that the cost of his earlier deferral was 2 years I can't get back. 2 years of Sunday cooking without thanks. 2 years of managing instead of being managed with. That is real and does not disappear because he made the phone call. He knows this. He is living with it. That is how it should be. The third thing I learned is about Raymond. Raymond is not a villain. I want to say this clearly because the story makes it easy to read him as the demanding father-in-law, the ungrateful critic, the man who walked into someone else's home and positioned himself at the head of the table. He is a man who learned in a particular household in Pittsburgh in the 1960s a particular set of understandings about how domestic life works. Those understandings served him in the sense that he got meals cooked and a house run for 67 years without requiring him to revise them. He never revised them because no one ever required him to. Helen didn't require it. I managed instead of requiring it. Caleb deferred instead of requiring it. When I finally stopped managing and Caleb finally stopped deferring, Raymond encountered a situation where his understandings were no longer operational, and he adapted, imperfectly, slowly, with the specific awkwardness of a person who is learning something at 67 that most people learn in their 20s. But he adapted. I find this ultimately more hopeful than I expected to. People can adapt, even at 67. Even when the adaptation requires acknowledging that you were wrong about something for a very long time. The recipe box is what got me. Helen had over 200 recipes in that box. 200. 42 years of cooking, of adjusting, of finding what was better. 200 small documents of care. He didn't know the box existed. He had eaten the food from those 200 recipes and criticized it and compared and noted what was missing, and he had not known about the box. Had not thought to ask about the box. Had not understood that the food was the product of an ongoing, effortful, documented practice. The food had just appeared. And now he was learning to make it appear. from her handwriting, from her notes in the margins. More time than it says. Grandma Reyes was right about the wine. Raymond likes less lemon, but I prefer this way. I found that last one on a recipe card. I wasn't meant to see he'd left it on the counter by accident when I was helping him look up something in the box. I saw it, and I didn't say anything. Raymond likes less lemon, but I prefer this way. Helen had a preference. She had kept it. She had made it her way quietly without making it a fight. I have thought about that sentence many times. I am not Helen. I did not keep my preference quietly. I made it a decision, and I made the decision visible, and it changed something. I don't know which of us was right. I think we both were in our own ways with our own men. And now I want to ask you something, because this story is on the surface about a father-in-law who criticized cooking and a wife who stopped cooking. But underneath that, it's about something more universal. It's about the labor that goes unacknowledged. Not just cooking. Cooking is the specific form it took in my house, but the labor that happens in every household every week that is performed by someone, usually a woman, not always, but usually, and that is received without thanks, because the receiving is so embedded in routine that the labor becomes invisible. The food appears, the house is clean, the children are bathed, the calendar is managed, the appointments are made, the social relationships are maintained. The emotional temperature of the household is regulated by someone, usually without acknowledgement, usually without thanks. I want to ask you, what labor are you performing that goes unacknowledged in your life? Not for the purposes of rage. I am not asking you to list your grievances and sit in them. I'm asking because identifying the labor is the first step to doing what I eventually did, making it visible. Making the choice to do it or not do it. Removing the invisibility. The cooking for me became visible when I stopped doing it. What would become visible in your life if you stopped doing it? What would Caleb see if he walked into a kitchen with no dinner in progress? What would Raymond encounter if there was no food on the table? What would the people in your life understand about your contribution if it suddenly wasn't there? I'm also asking, have you been Raymond? Have you sat at someone's table week after week and received what they made without fully seeing the making? Have you given feedback when what was needed was gratitude? Have you compared when what was needed was presence? I'm not here to shame anyone for this. Raymond didn't know he was doing it. He genuinely didn't know until he stood in my kitchen patting dry a piece of beef and hearing the sound it made in the pan and understanding for the first time what that sound required. If you are someone's Raymond, you can still have that moment. The recipe box is probably right there. You might not know about it. Go look. Leave me a comment. Tell me about your Sunday dinners, the ones that were wonderful and the ones that weren't. Tell me about the labor you perform. Tell me about the person in your life who changed, or the person you became when the situation required it. Tell me about the first time someone said thank you. I read every comment. I'm Meg. Next Sunday, Raymond is making pasta fagioli. He texted me Thursday to ask whether the parmesan goes in at the end or the beginning. It goes at the end. He's written it on the card.